You have tuned in to another episode of Aftermath. That is Scott Brown. I am Ross Padgett, and we are going to answer some money questions. On the docket today, what is the biggest misconception about 401ks and IRA Roths, or just IRAs? And honestly, I'll find out finally what the difference between a Roth one and a non-Roth one is. I don't even know if there is a difference, but that's why I'm here. And I have another question. If someone is listening and they want to get their financial life together this week, the hour that they are listening to this very episode, I'm going to ask Scott, what are the very first 3 steps? And lastly, what is a healthy emergency fund look like? I've always heard it from every financial guru that you always need an emergency fund. Well, what does that look like for you? What does that look like for me? What does that look like to anybody listening right now? It's happening. Stay right there. Buckle up. Turn up the volume. We's about to talk some money. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
My pleasure.
I am always pumped to talk money because it's one of the things that I remember being raised and being told to never talk about. And honestly, I think that has hurt me in the long run. So when I saw this opportunity to talk money in front of microphones, I would like to do that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think talking money has some level of stigma, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's uncouth.
Yeah, I think uncouth, tactless, whatever. I mean, I think some of that's born out of good intentions to, like, if I had to guess, this is a total guess, is that probably trickled down from wealthy families. Don't be running around telling people how much money we have or what you have in the bank. Or
I think you're kind of onto something because, right now, whenever I hear a lot more poor. I shouldn't say poor, but I've heard a lot of money conversations come from people who aren't millionaires.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's and there's nothing wrong about someone's origin or someone's story when it comes to their relationship with money. But I have a feeling that you might be onto something by saying that it started with the wealthy families of let's not talk money.
Yeah, let's not bring that up because then they're going to want some. I think that's probably the origins of it. Conversely, we all know the person, and I'll say guy because it's almost always a guy that likes to brag about what they have or drives the expensive car or wants to show off the expensive shoes and wants everybody to know about it. And what I typically find, there's an inverse relationship between how loud they are about the money that they have and how much money they actually have, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that discussions around money are somewhat taboo, but I think becoming less so. And I think that, I think part of it is like the haves, people who have money dating back to probably thousands of years, they weren't in a big hurry to share the secrets of how they got that money, right? Or they didn't want the tax man to know or whatever. They had their reasons, and that, I would say a lot of that still holds true today.
Well, I'm happy to buck that trend. I always emphasize that B. First question of today's episode, the biggest misconception about 401ks and IRAs. And also, I'll double down. IRAs versus IRA Roths. I know that we've talked about it before, but what is the biggest misconception about these epic institutions of saving, these plans?
That they're good or bad. I've had people say to me numerous times, and it still continues to this day, is what's your IRA paying? What's your 401k paying? And the first thing is the question is phrased completely wrong. An IRA or a 401k doesn't pay anything. It's a set of rules. So an IRA stands for individual retirement account. A 401k is just the code in the IRS code book that describes a vehicle that allows you to save tax deductible, tax deferred, and in some cases like a Roth, tax free. So an IRA, when somebody says to me, this is usually how I answer that question. What does your IRA pay, right? An IRA doesn't pay anything. An IRA is a bucket. right? And then if you put something in that bucket, by law, it's either tax deferred, tax deductible, or tax free, depending on how you structure it. And we'll get into how to manage your bucket in a second. But you could put a savings account in your IRA bucket. Here's your bucket. I'm going to put a savings account in there, and I'm going to earn the 2 or 3% or whatever a savings account earns. So your IRA bucket is earning 2 or 3%. Conversely, I might take my bucket and put a basket of blue chip stocks in it. I might put Microsoft in there, or Apple in there, or Nvidia in there, or Procter & Gamble, or John Deere, or Johnson & Johnson in there. And I might earn 8% historically on my bucket. They're both IRAs. Both buckets are IRAs. We started with the same bucket, right? We each got handed a bucket, one of those orange ones from Home Depot, and that was our bucket.
They are very trusty.
Very trusty, very handy. You see them everywhere. And you earned 2 on yours, not because that's what an IRA earns, but because it's what you put in your bucket. So that would be true of a 401k as well. A 401k is, just for lack of a better way to explain it, a bigger bucket. You can put more money in that bucket because it's a company-sponsored plan, and there are probably, a dozen choices inside of your 401k bucket. And we could be in the same 401k. We could both work for a major corporation, and we both have the same 401k available to us. We both have been given the same bucket, right? When we signed to work there, when they filled out health insurance and life insurance and all that stuff, sign up for the 401k, here's your bucket. And then we went home, we went on the website to look up Fidelity or whoever's running the plan, and we were both given a list of options. All these different small cap, large cap, international, stable value, whatever it was. We both saw that list. You picked a couple for your bucket.
Yep.
And I might have picked 2 different ones for my bucket, right? We're still in the same 401k. We will earn entirely different returns.
Wow. So all 401ks are they're all radically different.
They can be, even within the same plan.
Is there ever a time where you would recommend, let's say, an employee for a massive corporation to not sign up for a 401k?
I mean, the obvious answer is if you're literally can't afford to live, like you can't feed yourself, and we could that probably has reasons behind that we could address. But if we assume you can meet life's needs and you have sustenance, shelter, clothing, food, and there's probably no reason not to put money in a 401k. Because think about it. If you have a 401k with a match, which I would say 70 to 80% of plans have some kind of match, and let's just use a major corporation, most of them match 50% on the first 3 or 4 or 5 or 6%. So let's call it 6% just to make the math simple. They're going to give, so if you're making $100,000 a year and you put in 6%, $6,000, you're going to deduct that in a traditional sense. You're going to deduct that $6,000, right? So there's $1,000 in tax savings, and they're going to match $3,000 of the $6,000. So you made $1,000 on the tax deduction, and they gave you $3,000. Now you're up $4,000 on a $6,000 contribution. You've literally made 60-70% on your money the second you put it in the account. So the answer to your question is, unless you can't eat.
We got Scott clapping right now. We are emphasizing this.
I went to Antarctica, so I got the seal thing going.
Okay,
right
so
now.
It's not a clap, it's a seal impression.
Yes, it is a seal
wrong.
impression. So the reality is that unless you can't eat, unless you can't meet life's 3 criteria of clothing, shelter, and food, then you should be putting money in a 401k.
And that kind of segues into my next question is, if someone's listening right now and they are starting at 0, they could be 20 years old, they could be 30, but what are the first, I know you probably don't like this question because I'm always trying to make it simple for very complex scenarios. If someone is listening right now and they want to get their financial life together this week, this hour, what would you say is the first 3 steps? No particular order, but give me 3/4 of a Mount Rushmore of steps of how someone can get their financial life together.
I think it's pull out a yellow pad, and I'm doing this on the fly now. Because we did not discuss this. I would say pull out a yellow pad. I would say write down your income, on a weekly, monthly, whatever basis you feel comfortable with, and compare it to your expenses. Is there money left at the end of that? And if the answer is yes, then step 2 is to where can I save that money? Where can I start to put some money away that is most, as I just described, if you have access to a 401k that even resembles the description I just gave, that makes a lot of sense, assuming you have a little bit of savings liquid at the moment, meaning you have a couple grand, $5,000, 3 months expenses, 6 months expenses available to you. Then I would suggest that once you look at your income versus your expenses, and if there's a gap there that you can exploit, I would exploit it by saving in that manner. And then the third step would be to sit down and write down goals. Goals are overrated. Goals are great, but what is your process, right? First, find the goal. I want to retire at age 50 or 55 or 63 or whatever the number is, and I need $100,000 a year. Again, whatever it is. Do you even know that? Do you even know? Are you just walking around all day going, I hope I retire someday. I hope I have enough money. Sure would be nice to go to Europe. Oh, boy, really cool to have an RV someday. Or that bass boat I've always wanted.
Everybody wants it, but nobody knows it.
Those are goals, but there's no process, right? So the first goal is to figure out expenses versus income. Second goal is to figure out where you can most appropriately save. And the third phase would probably be to actually understand where you're going. Because if you're just blindly, again, walking around going, I hope this works out. I hope things turn out okay. I hope we can retire someday.
Well, yeah, that's not how reality works.
I can tell you it doesn't work in any phase of life. You actually have to have a process for getting where you're going. And I know that's cliche, and I know that's old man speak, but it's reality.
Honestly, I don't want to speak for my entire generation or just younger people, but when it sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. But it also goes the other way. When something sounds sometimes so cliche, it's for a reason. People go to Hawaii on their honeymoon for a reason. It when it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But if it sounds too bad to make you happy, it probably will make you happy. It just requires discipline and time and effort, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there's nobody listening to this that thinks to themselves it's just going to happen. It's not. Deep down inside, it's not a magical process that you wake up one day and everything's going to turn out okay. No matter what it is, whether you're educating yourself, taking care of your health, looking after a loved one, or saving for retirement, or to buy a house, or whatever financial goal you have, nobody watching this thinks, if I just ignore this, it'll be okay, right? But by the same token, they're very intimidated by those first few steps. And I would argue
and those
all
first
day
steps,
long.
You're talking about yellow pad. Write that down. Black and white.
It could be a white pad. It could be a purple pad.
As long as it's not an iPad, and I'll take a shot at that. Just use a pen. You shouldn't be charging your paper.
I would. That's a fair assessment. So don't write on your iPad. But again, I tell this joke all the time, and it's terrible. But the reality is that studies show the average American spends 2 weeks a year planning a vacation and about 2 minutes a year planning a retirement. Now, I don't know about you, but I intend on being retired a lot longer than my average vacation. So I would say once a year, whether it's by yourself, if you're single, or with your significant other, sit down and write this stuff down and say, okay, last year we said we were going to save more in the 401k. Did we do that or did we not do that? That's pretty simple. We said we want to retire at age 65, and to do that, we need to save $253.83 in this one thing, earning 6%.
Did we do that?
Did we do that or did we not do that? Right? So, you wouldn't show up at the airport and go, I hope they have tickets for me. I hope I can get on the plane. I hope there's some availability on this flight.
I beg all of our listeners after this episode, because we have one question left, but that's something that you can do at home. Mm-hmm. That is something
free.
That's completely free. And, I don't know if Scott feels this way, but I'll say it. Does it suck? Yeah, a little bit. It does suck. It's homework for adults. You graduated. You shouldn't. What? Pen and paper? Yeah. And a chair and a desk? Yeah. I'm saying, all of it. Grab your Lunchable. But you gotta do this. And it's like going to the gym. It's like going to, like you said, to the airport. The beginning part, those first 3 steps.
Yeah.
is the hardest part of going to a gym. Getting in your car is the hardest part of working out.
Yep.
And it's the same thing here. The hardest part about this, and this is honestly the best advice I think that we have shared on this program, because I know it sucks to say the ball's in your court, but yellow pad, how much are you making? What are your expenses? That's going to go a very, very long way that I bet you most people just simply do not do.
Well, what's the alternative, right? The alternative to what we're talking about is getting out a yellow pad, going through the drudgery of writing down goals and building a process and following up on the process and making sure that you're doing the things you said you wanted to do. The alternative to that is I met a guy and he told me this big life insurance policy will change my life. That's the alternative to that.
Well, there's also one more alternative. And I know this to be true because this is me. I have not written down all of my expenses and how much money is coming in. And the only reason why I haven't is because as long as I'm saving money, I go, cool, let's just keep doing that. And it's not a crazy amount, but it satiates my appetite of like, cool, we're doing okay financially. Now I bring that up to let everybody know I am doing this wrong. Because I'm basically running around chicken, no head, trying to save money. But I honestly have no idea if I'm doing well or doing poorly, just because I've actually never sat down with that yellow pad and found out what I honestly have no idea. I have no idea how much money I made last year. I have no idea how much money I've made this year. I just head down and work. And I don't know if that's the smartest way, because I'm sure that there's definitely some money left on the table.
Well, the weird part is that's the harder part, right? The harder part is head down and into the wind, right? You're doing the hard part.
Yeah, you're working hard, not very smart.
You're working hard, you're saving, and it's somewhat indiscriminate. So now the easy part would just to be say, all right, well, this is what I've saved. This is how much I save. How does that fit into my long-term plan on an annual basis? Just to sit down and say, is this the best place to save? Is this the best way to save? Is this amount the proper amount to save? And those are, you've done the hard part. The hard part is saving.
Yeah, I mean, I wake up 2 days a week going, all right, here it comes, $0. We're eating air for dinner. I could avoid doing that just by writing down on a yellow piece of paper my expenses and how much income I have.
Right. Maybe you could have a little more than air. Maybe you could go to the ice cube sandwich you referred to earlier.
Yeah, there it is.
You could splurge a little that day, but understanding that maybe there's some unnecessary austerity there. Maybe there's no utility in doing that for you, and we can talk about the utility of money later, but there's no if you realize, well, I actually didn't need to do that because I'm on track, because I'm saving here and I'm on pace to meet the goals that I've already written down on my yellow pad, then again, that allows you, because today, Ross of today versus Ross of tomorrow, we've always talked about how important it is to take care of future you, but current you's cool too. Current you needs to understand, because if you understand if future you is okay, current you is going to enjoy himself a heck of a lot better.
A lot more. Because right now, I don't think there's any version of me that I'm super in love with. I'm just saying, I have not. My hygiene could be a lot better. Moving on. Don't
not even gonna address
interact
that.
with that
I
last
will
little. We'll cut that.
Yeah.
Whatever. We'll leave it in for comedic effect. Last question.
Yes.
I've talked to other financial people. I'm not saying that I cheated on you. No, but I have one of my stand-up comedian friends. He's majored in finances, and I did not know that until 12 years ago.
I majored in stand-up comedy. That's so weird.
That's so weird. You guys Freaky Friday. But the first thing he said to me was, you need an emergency fund.
Yeah.
Never throw down 100% of your funds, not just in one stock, but you should always have this X amount of dollars. I think he at the time said $10,000, or maybe it was 20. I forgot. But he was very adamant about me having an emergency fund. Well, my question to you, Scott, is what does a healthy emergency fund even look like? There's not. The one thing I've learned about finance is talking to you over, these now 10 episodes, is that there really isn't any one size fit all wave of wand financial guru advice that is perfect for every single financial situation. So what does an emergency fund look like on the spectrum of different people?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of questions in one there. So the first question is the amount and then where to put it, I think. And maybe even a third question, well, what is the purpose of that? And starting with the amount, I think that's an individual thing. I know that's a cop-out answer, but I'm not all bent out of shape if somebody says 3 months works for me. And I'm not all bent out of shape if somebody says a year works for me, right? And anything in between. You just need to know that, again, I use the same stupid, tired examples every time, is if the roof, you have an issue with the roof, or the AC goes out at the house, or the radiator goes out on the car. Cars still have radiators, right?
Yeah, dude, I drive a hybrid.
Yeah.
For me to turn on the car, I have to hit add 30 seconds.
Right.
I don't understand this thing.
So I use those examples to say, what keeps you from calling your parents? What keeps you from calling Uncle Harry? What keeps you from that uncomfortable, awkward moment? And really, what keeps you from the satisfaction and peace of mind of knowing you can take care of yourself? That's a big one there. Whatever gives you that, where you have that peace of mind to say, I got this. You know, if you're 24 years old or 25 years old and you're fresh out of college and everybody's expecting you to fall flat on your face because that's what people apparently do, or they think of you, or you think they think of you, think about how that's going to feel when you pull up to the house and somebody said, oh, man, what happened with the car? I heard you had a big... Dad says to you, listen, Junior, you're probably having a tough time with that car. You need me to help you out? And you're like, no, Dad, I got this.
That's going to feel good.
Think about that moment. The second part is where to put it. People will try to get cute with savings. I don't think you should ever try to get cute. Sometimes you win by not losing. Everybody, well, where can I get 3.9 instead of 3.8? Or listen, that's a negligible return on I don't want to say a nominal amount of money, but probably it isn't a 500 grand you're putting in that. It's probably 5 grand, 7 grand, 8 grand, 11 grand. It's not going to change your life. Put it somewhere safe, somewhere insured, where the government covers it, and feel, it could be treasuries, it could be a money market, it could be a CD, it could be a savings account. Don't outsmart yourself. Don't spend 6 months trying to figure out how to get 3.9 over 3.8. Put it somewhere safe and call it a day. And then the third purpose is,
that was me celebrating because I have done something correct.
Yes. So the third thing is the purpose, and there is no purpose. You don't know what the purpose is. This is a purpose yet to be determined, right? But when it will be determined. It will happen. Something will happen. A kid will get sick. A roof will blow off. An air conditioner will go out. Something will occur. Tires. I mean, one of the least satisfying purchases of a young person's life is spending $600 on a set of tires where you're like, I don't even like tires. They're ugly and they're dirty. Right. But you say I need them, so I'm going to get them. So again, these are the types of things that we don't know are going to happen. We just know something's going to happen. So the amount is an individual thing. Whatever makes you comfortable and keeps you from that moment with your dad in the driveway I just described and gives you meaning and fulfillment. And the second thing would be where to put it. Don't overthink it. Put it somewhere safe, somewhere conservative. And the third thing would be the purpose, and you don't know what that is yet.
Yeah. And that's a little bittersweet on the last part because you don't know what it is, but just know it's going to suck. Well, it's an emergency fund. This is why you have it, is for emergencies. And emergencies don't tend to be... push notifications filled with great news coming across your phone.
No, it's never good news. And the other thing I would say about it is having an emergency fund is a trampoline to other savings. And what I mean by that is if you're new to a job, again, we'll use our 25-year-old college graduate goes to get a job at Lockheed or Disney or wherever it is, and they don't have any savings. They don't have an emergency fund. And somebody says, how much do you want to put in the 401k? And by the way, you can't touch that till you're 59 and a half. And you're like, oh.
Is that by law?
Yes.
59 and a half?
Yeah, there are ways you can get around it at 55, but by and large, it's money you're not touching until you're 60.
I just love that the government went back to being a 5-year-old and saying like and a half.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That's really funny.
It is a funny number. It used to be 70 and a half to take it out. Or you had to take it out.
Still with the half.
Yeah. So the point there being is if you've got let's use our college graduate, 25 years old. They've got 7,000, 7,500, 8,200, whatever they've got in their savings account. And you ask them that same question, how much do you want to put in the 401k that you can't touch for the next 40 years? They're going to be, 100 or two, I think makes sense. Whereas if they didn't have the savings and they didn't have the emergency fund, they're going to be like, I don't know if I should do this, right? And that would be fair for them to think that. Is this a responsible thing to do when I have no liquid savings? Think about the implications of that conversation for those two different 25-year-olds. The first one, first of all, has savings, and that makes them comfortable and makes them sleep better at night. Second of all, it allows them to start their retirement savings ahead of the other 25-year-old who may spend the next 7 years trying to figure out the emergency fund. That 7 years could be millions of dollars in savings. So it's the implications of the emergency fund are twofold in that example.
Before we get out of here, and this is coming off the hip right here on this last question, but how hard is it? Because we had a small sample size there. In those 7 years, that could have been millions. The more and more I learn about money, the harder it is for me, being vulnerable here, is to stay happy. And the reason why is because I'm a dumb farm animal at the end of the day, and it's hard not to fall into the trap of, why didn't I? What if impossible beef stock was right there, or crypto? Like, how much of your life, or this is kind of a personal question,
sure,
do you have of that?
Zero.
How? Why? Because but you should know, as the one non-financial advisor out of us two, that's the most common mentality that happens. Without a financial advisor in the room.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of average Joe Schmoes like myself are talking about. It hurts that we didn't jump on that one thing. How were you able to answer that so zero comfortably?
Because I did it 100 times in my 20s and 30s, and then I went, well, this is stupid. Because you can do that to yourself all day long. There's no lack of opportunity to beat yourself up over what you didn't do. I should have bought Bitcoin at 10 grand. I should have bought Nvidia 7 years ago. I should have been part of the IPO for Apple. What about Meta? Why didn't I buy Meta? Oh my gosh, why didn't I flip houses in 2007? Oh my goodness, I should have bought tech stocks in 1999. And I could do this all day long. I've been doing this 40 years. At some point you realize I'm going to miss out on way more things than I'm going to participate in. But I'm going to participate in some things. And if you're disciplined and you have a process and a reason for participating in things, you think Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger, they didn't buy Apple till way late in the game. They didn't buy tech stocks of any kind till way late in the game because they didn't get it. They don't care that they missed out because they were buying railroads and Geico, right? They're not upset that they didn't buy Nvidia. They're not upset that they didn't get Apple. And FOMO is a big problem in your defense. Everybody feels that way.
Everybody. I apologize. I'm over here trying to tell you something that it sounded like that you didn't know. This is literally your job and your career is dealing with that mentality.
I fight. It's the biggest thing I fight every day.
Yeah.
Because as Charlie Munger would say, greed doesn't drive American behavior when it comes to money. Envy drives it. And we're hearing, especially in this day and age, where you can pick up your phone right now, and I'm looking at two young guys on their phones right there, right? They're probably seeing something every 60 to 120 seconds that tells them they're missing out. They're missing out on something. Now, most of this shit they're missing out on is bullshit. It is literally shit, right? But they don't know that. Right? And people who say, well, why didn't we buy Nvidia? Why didn't we buy this? Why didn't we buy that? And the thing changes every year. Yeah. Once you recognize that the thing is changing every year and you take a deep breath and you're like, yeah, but I did buy this portfolio of diversified stocks. I did buy the S&P 500. I do have 300 grand in a bond fund. I did those things. First of all, you live in America. What a win that is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it is.
You were not born in an African desert where you have flies surrounding your head.
Yeah.
Right? That's a huge win. Take the wins. If you earn 7%, say, by golly, I earned 7%, that's pretty good. And if your neighbor earned 12, first of all, they're probably lying. But even if they did, who cares?
And I know we're out of time, but I have to ask you on this episode, how often do you find yourself being a therapist?
90% of the time.
10%.
I would say 70 to 80% of my job is behaviorally based. I have to control. I say I don't manage money for wealthy people. I manage wealthy people's behavior.
Oof. There's no better way. We're not going to stick the landing better than that. That's episode 10 of Aftermath right there. Scott, thank you so much. I threw another question there.
It was awesome.
At the end, because it's hard. It's hard to defeat that what if and self-loathing, and you get angry at yourself. Why didn't I?
Yeah.
And to hear, hey, you have done that more than anybody I have ever met.
Yep.
And also coming to grips with that peace, man, it kind of gives me hope that there's an oasis of being content out there. It gives me hope. This has been Aftermath. My name's Ross. That's been Scott Brown. I really hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, because, man, I'm ready to go and buy some yellow pieces of paper. We'll catch you next week. Thank you so much for listening. Peace.